I'm going to address something here. So, on social media, on TikTok and specifically, some people were wondering why I had predicted Vanderbilt to beat South Carolina later in the season. I just thought I would address this right here, right now, and clear this air. Even before this week, like I said, preseason, I had Vanderbilt beating South Carolina in Nashville. After this week, it's even more apparent that that's going to happen. I saw something in Vanderbilt, and I should have saw it when I was picking this Virginia Tech game, because like I said, I had Virginia Tech beating Vanderbilt. I saw something that Clark Lee was doing and taking a lot of initiative, basically throwing everything he can against the wall, hoping something sticks, because honestly, what does he have to lose except his job? Obviously. But that's incentive to do all you can. If we look at Vanderbilt and what they're doing, what Clark Lee has done in doing all this stuff, getting New Mexico State's quarterback, running their offense, basically getting the offensive coordinator from there to come and run this new offense, as well as Clark Lee taking over defensive play calling duties. That's something else that's very interesting. Usually you don't see that out of a head coach. Clark Lee taking that into his own hands, and that made a big difference Saturday. It really did. And let's look at South Carolina and their struggles against Old Dominion. 23-19 was the score. They struggled. I mean, that's an understatement. They struggled at home versus Old Dominion. They managed to get out of there with a victory. It's ugly. Will the ugliness continue for South Carolina? I don't know. But Shane Beamer is in a tough spot. And honestly, I thought Sam Pittman was in a bad situation. Shane Beamer is in a tough spot there at SC. And now everybody is looking at, after what Vandy did Saturday, everybody's looking at Vanderbilt's schedule. They're looking through it. All right, they could win that game. They could win that game. Oh, South Carolina. That's a good possibility. That's what everybody sees. Everybody sees it now. People on TikTok were wondering, you have South Carolina losing to Vanderbilt. Yes, I absolutely do. And today I stand firm on that more than ever. Now, on the flip side, now that we've handled that, I had a little bit of fun with it. Because yes, I had Vanderbilt beating South Carolina. But I had South Carolina beating Clemson, the in-state rival, at the end of the season. That may have been stretching it a little bit, okay? Maybe a little bit of silliness from Brandon to come up with something, so silly like that. Look, that's a prediction. You hope if you're Clemson that you not, you don't get to the point where you lose to South Carolina at the end of the year. Now, crazy things happen. Crazy things happen every season. But, Clemson could be vulnerable at that point in the year. They could be some injuries away from being even worse than they are now. Their depth, they have an issue with depth. We saw it Saturday versus Georgia. We've talked about here on this show, Dabo. We talked about it last year because he was really adamant about the transfer portal and not wanting to use it, not really caring about the transfer portal NIL stuff. He's complacent. He's content with what he is, his philosophies, and I respect that. I really do. Look, Clemson's doing really good in the old traditional sense of high school recruiting and things like that, and they're making that work, but here is where a team like Vanderbilt can jump ahead of you. Vanderbilt believe it or not, has NIL. I've read some reports and some analysis from certain people that said Vanderbilt even has their NIL in a better spot than South Carolina does. Vanderbilt can afford to do some stuff. You see what they're doing in the transfer portal now, what we've been talking about for the past few minutes. Vanderbilt could end up could compete with a Clemson. Not saying they could beat Clemson. They could compete. South Carolina could compete with Clemson. South Carolina's not as stable of a program, at least at this very moment, that Vanderbilt is. Look, it's silly to say South Carolina is going to beat Clemson at the end of the year, but look, if it happens, I'm going to look very smart. If it doesn't happen, well, I just made a silly pick. We're a long way from that point. There's a lot of football to be played. There's a lot of, wacky things that are going to happen between now and then. But I stand firm on both of those predictions. Vandy is going to beat South Carolina. South Carolina is going to beat Clemson. And I'm nervous about that second one.